Welcome to Workplace Psychology with Dr. Martha Greidick. I'm Dr. Martha Greidick. This podcast examines a wide variety of work-related issues through the lens of industrial and organizational psychology. And while many of the topics discussed here may be seen as intended for white-collar employees and their employers, in reality, the ideas presented here are applicable across organizations and industries. Additionally, many of the topics discussed here may be applicable outside of the workplace. I encourage you to examine what's presented here, apply what makes sense to you, and simply discard the rest. Incivility at the workplace is a topic that's neither new nor rare, and incivility in itself is more common at work than we'd like for it to be. Some examples of incivility can include things such as ignoring someone when they say hello to you, or perhaps interrupting them when they're mid-sentence without a good reason or without an apology for doing so, or maybe leaving someone out of a meeting, whether that's formal or informal meetings at work. Incivility can also include things such as taking the last of something and not replacing it. Maybe that's supplies, maybe that's coffee, whatever the case may be. Or it may be something as bold as taking something that doesn't belong to you and not having permission to do it. Maybe that's somebody's food or drink, or maybe their supplies. Incivility can range widely, but it all has the same end result, and it's not a good one. Incivility can be disruptive, it can change and affect the environment for the worse, and it can affect things such as motivation or even wanting to be at work in general. When more pronounced, incivility can manifests itself in maybe rude or aggressive behaviors, or just any other behaviors that are inappropriate at work. The bottom line is that whatever the magnitude of incivility at the workplace, or anywhere else for that matter, it comes with lots of baggage and bad side effects. So there's absolutely no room for it at the workplace or anywhere else. And the interesting thing about incivility and the associated behaviors is that these are the kinds of behaviors most of us should have been taught about in childhood, meaning the things to do and to not do to get along well with others. And yet here we are as adults talking about incivility at work, because these are exactly the kinds of behaviors that are happening. You may be wondering, what can we do in order to discourage incivility at work and encourage the desired behaviors, the right kinds of behaviors? Well, the good news is that there are things that both individuals can do and that the organization can do. And I will go through a list for both, but I'll tell you right now that the bulk of the responsibility falls on the employer. As individuals, the simplest thing that you can do is to model the right behavior. Don't get sucked into anybody else's drama or incivility, and don't react in a way that demonstrates your own behavior that would not be considered to be appropriate or civil. So model the right kind of behavior. The other thing that you can do is that when you do experience incivility at the workplace, don't be afraid to speak up. Now, you have to be professional and in control of your emotions, of course. You don't want to be aggressive or confrontational or accusatory, because that tends to escalate the situation. But you also have to be able to be firm and clear in regards to what behaviors from others will and will not be tolerated. So don't wait hoping that the behavior will go away, but rather speak up, speak your mind, love yourself enough and have enough respect for yourself to demand the same level of respect from others. And finally, remember the importance of providing feedback to your employer, and hopefully your employer provides a platform for you to do so. So whether that's a one-on-one conversation with someone in management or HR, whatever the case may be, or whether that's a suggestion box, you should have the ability and take that opportunity to provide feedback if management is not aware or vaguely aware of what's going on in terms of work incivility at their organization. They will probably not make it a priority to address it. So make sure you speak up. As I already mentioned, the employer here has the vast majority of responsibility. First and foremost, as an employer, you have to create a culture and an environment that discourages incivility and, frankly, that does not allow it, but rather create an environment and a culture that encourages the right kind of behavior from everybody at the workplace at every level. That means management and non-management alike. Use policies and behavior codes for guidelines. You have to be absolutely clear in terms of what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, and what will not be tolerated. Oftentimes we make assumptions that people know right from wrong, that people know what is okay and what is not, but you'd be surprised how many times they don't. So unless you're very clear with people, you're leaving it up to chance in terms of how others behave. Provide a safe feedback option for individuals where they can offer feedback if they are experiencing incivility from someone else at the workplace. Make sure that there are hopefully multiple modes in which somebody could share their thoughts and their feedback, whether that means providing them with an option of anonymity, whether that means one-on-one meetings in person, whatever that may translate to. As an employer, it is absolutely your responsibility to provide that opportunity and encourage feedback from others, and also make sure that people know that that opportunity exists and that it is safe for them to share their feedback. Increase awareness of incivility at the workplace. As I alluded to before, you may be surprised how many people behave the way they behave and think that it's okay, that it's acceptable, when it's not. It's only through education and awareness that many realize what kinds of behaviors are not acceptable, especially at the workplace. So make sure that you provide the proper awareness. That may be through training, formal, informal, feedback from the employer to the workforce, whatever the case may be. But explore different modalities as a way of making your workforce aware of workplace incivility and your stand on it as an employer, as an organization. Don't allow or encourage incivility by providing excuses, whatever those excuses may be. Just because somebody's having a bad day does not mean that they can take it out on others. Just because somebody is in a management position doesn't mean that they're there to abuse other people and everybody else simply has to take it. So excuses are absolutely not allowed. Address incivility before it spreads. Don't wait to address it later or ignore it. That in itself sends a message that, one, that it's okay to behave in these ways, or that maybe certain people or groups of people are exempt from having to be civil at work. So make sure you as an employer address any kind of incivility that you're aware of or that you witness right away. As an employer, you need to understand how important it is to hire for attitude. While it's so easy to get caught up hiring for skills and experience, attitude is huge. You can teach skills, and experience will be gained over time, but attitude can make or break how that person behaves at the workplace. So make sure one of your biggest hiring standards as an employer is the right attitude. And of course, to better understand a behavior and behavioral patterns, it's important for the organization to look at the bigger picture. Know what's happening in the world, whether that's globally, whether that's in your own country or in your own neighborhood. Understand what's happening with the economy. Understand what's happening with people's personal lives, their families. And of course, you'll be limited in how much you can know about that. But the more you know about external potential influences, external factors, the better of an understanding you will have in terms of people's behaviors. And when we're addressing something such as incivility at the workplace, as an employer, it is your responsibility to be aware of as much as possible. Of course, being aware of external factors or influences does not mean that they can be used as an excuse for poor behavior, but that's there simply for you as the employer to better understand what's happening so that you can deal with it more effectively. As you can see, incivility at the workplace can come in many flavors, so to speak. It can be subtle or it can be very aggressive and in your face, but regardless of how it presents itself, it can be very negative and detrimental to the workplace environment and to the individuals at the workplace. So it's important that we not allow it to be part of the norm, and when we see it, that we not allow it to continue and to spread. As this episode comes to an end, let's review what was discussed. Incivility at the workplace is neither new as a topic nor uncommon in terms of what's happening in so many workplaces. The good news is that there are things that we can all do to help the situation. That means both the individuals and the organization. Individuals can model the right behavior and stop undesired or incivil behavior when it happens. As an individual, you also have the responsibility to offer feedback to your employer so that they are aware of what's happening and can take the right sort of actions to put a stop to it. As an organization, your responsibility is a big one. You absolutely must create the kind of culture and environment that does not allow incivility to be part of it, but rather encourages the desired behaviors, the right kinds of behaviors that make it pleasant for everyone to be at your organization. Make sure you use policies and behavior codes as guidelines when people don't know what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. You cannot simply assume and hope for the best. So be clear and forward in terms of what kinds of behaviors are acceptable at the workplace and what kind of behaviors will not be tolerated. Provide a safe feedback option for your employees so that when they do experience or witness incivility at the workplace, they have a safe means of sharing that with you as the employer. Increase awareness of incivility at the workplace. One of the best ways of exposing something is to make people aware of it and allow them to understand it for what it is and how it can affect everybody. Don't allow for excuses and address incivility right away so that it doesn't go unchecked, doesn't spread, and isn't seen as something that is acceptable and allowed. When you're hiring new talent, remember to hire for attitude. While skills and experience matter, attitude can make or break the entire situation. So if you hire someone with bad attitude, their skills and experience come to mean nothing in the long term when they're ruining everybody else's experience at the workplace. And finally, as an employer, it is your responsibility to have as much of an understanding of the behaviors that are happening in your organization as possible. And part of that is understanding the big picture and being aware of what's happening in your community, in your country, in the world, in the economy, and even to some degree in the lives of your employees. As the week unfolds, I invite all of you to examine this topic of incivility at the workplace. Are you experiencing, are you witnessing incivility at the workplace? And what can you do to improve the situation? And maybe you are the source of the problem. Have you been told that your behavior is unacceptable and yet you've refused to change it? So this is an opportunity for everybody to think about what was discussed in this podcast, in this episode, and reflect on your own experiences, the environment in which you work, the environment and culture which you promote as an employer. And everybody has the responsibility to work towards change and improvement. As you learned in this episode, both individuals and the employers have a responsibility to take actions, to take note, and to work towards change. For those of you who experience this podcast in an audio-only version, I invite you to check out my YouTube channel where you can get the video version of the podcast, and that is Stress Free with Dr. G. And the link for that is in the description below. In addition to the video version of the podcast, my YouTube channel also contains videos that focus on stress management. So I encourage you to check that out. Thank you for joining me today. Please subscribe to this podcast. I look forward to seeing you here again next time. Until then, I wish you joy and well-being.